Hello, hello, and welcome to This Week in People. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt. The show is supported by my friends at PIN, an incredible internal communications tool for the distributed workforce. Let's dig right into the articles for today. So, as every week, all the articles that I'm about to walk you through are listed in the show notes. So, I'll give you an overview. Definitely recommend you go ahead and read the full article in the URL below the video. Let's jump right in. So chances are, if you're watching this and you work in HR, this email might be sandwiched in between emails from recruiters about HR jobs. The market is on fire right now, as all of you know, and there's some data now in this Axios report to back that up. Job postings for HR roles are up 50%. And, also in a range of different CHRO and CPO communities I'm in, every day, it seems like members are, sharing new heads of people, CPO roles from companies that are hiring and scaling. And this is because of a couple of factors. One, turnover is obviously happening. Two, companies are investing in particularly HR leadership at a much earlier stage. So even, for the VC world, seed stage, Series A stage, they're investing in ahead of people then. And I'll get to an article in a minute that will explain why. And not only that, but the third factor, and probably the biggest factor, is the events of 2020 really exposed traditional old school HR teams that struggled to help their business navigate that. And so you're seeing a lot of organizations up level their HR teams. They're in growth mode again. This doesn't just apply to HR leadership. This is recruiting. This is all the way across the board. So great time to be doing what we do. And while you're at it, make sure you are paid appropriately. The next article I want to get to is a piece by The Guardian, and it gets into really some of the challenges with how we've been approaching hybrid and remote, particularly as it looks into some of the kind of industrial age constructs of work. Had to be in an office, had to be 9 to 5, had to be Monday through Friday. And I'm generalizing across certain job types and categories here, of course. So don't at me with messages about what about other employees? Yes, those exist. I'm talking specifically about the employees that were able to work remotely. And this article kind of gets into really the opportunity for us to be rethinking the when, where, and what of work. And so part of the big macro conversations that are happening right now in HR and people. Speaking of hybrid, another great report. Josh Bersin and his team have been on fire over the last year, and they have a new report out on part of their big reset theme of reports on hybrid work. And it gets into some really important and useful resources, conversations, prompts that you should be thinking about as you're designing your work constructs, particularly if you choose hybrid as the option that you're going with. So you go to the website there, you can download the report. Definitely recommend you check that out, bookmarking that. That's probably going to be a good reference material for those of you that are designing your return to workplace and or hybrid plans. So some things that get into, obviously, it pulls data from some other reports that Burst and his team have run in the past. So again, chock full of great information. Definitely check this out. So hybrid is the answer, right? Well, not so fast. There was a really, I thought, insightful thread from Dustin Moskovitz, the founder and CEO of Asana, about some of the limitations of hybrid. And it gets into, again, some of the pieces mentioned in that first article around, much of the way we're thinking about hybrid and we've been thinking about and approaching kind of remote during the pandemic is really just porting all of our co-location-based practices to remote. And, that's not really optimized for remote and hybrid. And so, there's lots of people that feel hybrid is, absolutely going to be the way forward. And there are other people who kind of point out some, conversations and risks and challenges with hybrid that we should be asking. There's no doubt hybrid is the most difficult of the constructs, whether you're fully distributed or fully co-located. Hybrid's got so much variance in between, and it's absolutely the most difficult to manage effectively. And Dustin makes some really compelling points here as to why that is. So earlier I mentioned you're seeing more companies begin to hire ahead of people at even the Series A level, and this is why. Matt Bradburn wrote a really great piece on people debt. And for those of you who have worked in engineering organizations, we talk a lot about technical debt, but people debt is very real and arguably more difficult to uproot. And so I think, the challenge is, and Matt lays it out, very articulately in this piece, oftentimes we're so focused on growth at all costs that we're not building the infrastructure that will actually support our organization when we go from 100 to 200 to 500 to 1,000. And the typical cadence for organizations is, you grow as far as you can with all of those band-aids and triage of process. And then you hit a point and it just all breaks. And you've got to bring in a new seasoned chief people officer, head of people, CHRO, or the title might be. They've got to uproot all of your systems, your technology, your process. It's painful. It's cumbersome. It's expensive. And so many companies have made that mistake in their growth that I think, companies are starting to wise up now and make those investments earlier in their stage. So again, definitely check out this piece by Matt. Lays out some really good points about, what typically incurs people debt and how to offset that earlier in the process. Podcasts. So, the Redefining HR podcast is still on hiatus. That's going to be coming back next month. But in the meantime, it was really fun to join my friend Claude Silver on her Emotional Optimism podcast. So if you're ever curious about my background, kind of how I came to this role, how I got my start in the field, and maybe the connection between skateboards and open source, this podcast is for you. So I always have fun jamming with Claude, and this conversation was no exception. So definitely worth a listen if you're curious about that. Another podcast I want to recommend broadly is All Hands, Lattice's podcast hosted by Caitlin Holloway. And this conversation with, HubSpot, Katie Burke, their chief people officer, was incredible. They're two of my favorite people in the people space. And this conversation lived up to that billing. So definitely worth a download and a listen on your end if you're interested at all about modern conversations around people and culture. And if you're listening to this, you probably are. So definitely worth your time. Lastly, for those of you that are viewing from the United States, this is the beginning of your Independence Day weekend. So happy birthday, America. Nothing quite says happy birthday like Hulk Hogan and a patriotic guitar with a patriotic backdrop. So I hope you have great weather. I hope you are avoiding the heat for those of you out west. I know it's been brutal. But yeah, enjoy your long weekend, and I will see you back next week. I'll have some updates. I'm kicking off the Bravo cohort of the Redefining HR Accelerator next week as well. So I'll have some great recaps from that in next week's show. So until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next week.